Welcome to what has been an absolutely fantastic car for us here at our house. Last year in September, we took delivery of this 2021 Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus. Now, when we went about thinking about getting a Standard Range Plus, the idea was to get another electric car, but that would be used primarily around here locally and wouldn't necessarily be for longer trips. So the Model 3 Standard Range Plus made perfect sense. It was substantially less money than the cheapest Model Y at the time. So the Standard Range Model Y was available for a short period of time, and I wish we would have done that. However, it is not available for sale here in North America. So this particular Standard Range Plus was the first one here in North America that offered the LFP battery pack. At the time, delivery times were very long to get a Standard Range Plus, and Tesla released the option to get a LFP battery pack and you would lose a few miles of range. So the car originally came with 262 miles of range, and if you opted to get the LFP battery pack, you'd get 253 miles of range. But here's the thing. By getting LFP, you can actually charge to 100%, where the traditional battery pack in most Teslas, it can only be charged to 80 or 90% on a daily basis. Otherwise, you run the risk of doing some damage to the battery pack long term. So this gave us the opportunity to have 100% charge, which means that full 253 miles of range compared to at 90%, that other Model 3 would only get 235 miles of range on a daily basis. So in reality, this has more range in usable range than the traditional battery packs. Now, that does come with some drawbacks, and there are some things that I really like and some things that I don't like, and I want to cover all that here today and talk to you about, is the Standard Range Model 3 worth it for you? What's going on, everybody? BTG here, and once again I am partnering up with Charity Stars, and this time they're giving away a Model S Plaid. Now, as you well know, I did get to experience the Model S Plaid, and it was amazing. So here's the deal. All you have to do is go to www.charitystars.com/BTG100, and that's going to get you an extra 100 entries when you donate for your chance to win a Model S Plaid. Now, proceeds will be going to One Tree Planted, who is combating deforestation across the globe. What they're trying to do is provide relief for forests across the globe, whether it's a wildfire or deforestation activities from mining activities. One Tree Planted is focused on the environment. Just like your Tesla is good for the environment, One Tree Planted is also concerned with ensuring that our environment is healthy for future generations. So if you want a chance to win a Model S Plaid, make sure to visit charitystars.com/BTG100 and you'll get your 100 entries included. So thanks again to Charity Stars for sponsoring this video. So we've had this car for 6 months now, and at the time we purchased it, the purchase price was $39,990. And since we got the black exterior and the white interior, that was $2,000 in additional options, bringing us to $41,990. Now, since then, prices have gone up substantially, and this car now starts at $44,990. In addition, that black exterior used to be a $1,000 option, and it's now $1,500. So if you were to buy this car today, it would cost you $47,490. Now, that said, they did increase the battery pack in the Standard Range Model 3, so it now gets 272 miles at full charge, and because it is LFP, you do get that full 272 on a daily basis by charging to 100%. So the price has gone up substantially, and it really eats into the value of this car. When this thing was sub $40,000, it really checked a lot of the boxes. Now, Tesla isn't the only one who's increased prices, and prices on all cars have gone up quite a bit. As a matter of fact, just last year, the average sales price of a new car hit $47,000. So this car still comes in under the average new car price in America, and also by obviously being a Tesla, gives you a lot of value. and still being under that average price. So 3 years after the launch of the Model 3, here we are with what is today's current Model 3, and there's been some updates. The interior has been refreshed, which is really nice. They've also added some sound dampening, double pane windows, and it's really made quite a leap forward, especially in the quality of the car. Now, this car isn't perfect, and there are some cosmetic things that aren't right on the car, but as far as driving this car and any issues mechanically with the car, we've had absolutely zero issues, which is the same experience we've had with our Model Y. So cosmetically, really, there's a few of the gaps that are a little bit larger than what you would expect from a $40,000 car. And I do have this really weird issue in the back where the door on the driver's side does have some resistance closing, so that's a little weird. And then the only other issue that I really have is the hood is misaligned. It sinks down on one side and it sits up higher on the other side. But other than that, this car is solid. And the biggest thing that I notice in driving this car is how quiet it is all around. It's not just the road noise that's really good in this car. In addition, I don't have any of the creaks and cracks and rattles that sometimes can plague new cars, especially when there's a lot of plastic. Some of the original Model 3s that launched, that was one of the complaints, is there were a lot of rattles and a lot of squeaks, and this car just doesn't have that. And I think it's a real testament to the progress that Tesla has made over that last 3 years in making and selling the Model 3. Now, we haven't put nearly the miles on this car as we have our Model Y. However, this car has been perfect for what we wanted it to do. So this car, again, was for driving around town, local driving, picking up the boys, dropping them off at school, and potentially some more local trips. And this car has been great for all of that. But I do want to talk about some of the things that I've really come to like about this particular car and some of the things I don't like. And I think it's really a good way to help you understand, can this be a car that you should consider? So I'll start with the things that I really like. Like I said, this car is quiet and it's smooth. One of the things in my Model Y that has the bigger wheels on it is it's not very smooth. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not a plush ride. This car rides much better than my Model Y does going down the road. So hitting these little bumps, you don't really feel it, which is a huge improvement. Now, this car does have the 18-inch wheels, which is definitely going to help in that aspect because we have a bigger sidewall on the tires. But in addition, the cabin noise is really quiet, and it's a lot quieter than it is in our Model Y, which is certainly interesting. But it's probably because of the size of the car, and it sits much lower. It's not pushing through as much wind, and again, those tires are probably making a big impact. Other than that, everything else on paper is the same in this car as it is in the Model Y when it comes to sound dampening. They both have those double pane windows, and they both have the same seals around the car. One of the really nice things about the standard range Model 3 is that you get that same tech and experience that you get in the more expensive models. So you're not really skipping out on any of the tech features. All you're really missing out on by switching between the models are some of the available options like additional speakers. You would also be passing out on all-wheel drive by having just the one motor in the back instead of two. And the performance of the car, of course, going 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds, which is not slow, by the way. But then finally, of course, the obvious thing is range. So this car at 253 is almost 100 miles less than the long-range all-wheel drive version. One of the things I really appreciate about this car in particular is how efficient it is. Because it only has one motor and it sits lower and it's lighter, the efficiency on this car is really good. So a watt-hour per mile is much less in this car than it is in our Model Y, and that really is a nice thing to have when you're on the lower end of having range available. So having a more efficient car is very important when you have limited range. Also, another thing is LFP. That means I can charge to 100% in any situation, which is great. And even Tesla is starting to encourage people to charge to 100% when they're equipped with LFP batteries. 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds is still pretty good, and with an electric car you're still going to have that instant acceleration. So even though it's a slower 0 to 60, it's still plenty fast for most people. The white interior, obviously, I love. That's always been something I've loved. I've loved it in the Model Ys. I love it in this car. And I also really like the black exterior, although it's only going to look good for about 15 minutes after I clean it because it's a black exterior. One of the things that I paid for that actually now comes standard in the Model 3 standard range is a heated steering wheel and those heated rear seats. So the price has gone up substantially, and it's nice that you don't have to pay additional for those options to be unlocked like I had to do. I paid $300 and it's well worth it, especially if you're in a climate that justifies having warm hands on the steering wheel. One of the things that I thought would be a big problem is the fact that the standard range reduces the number of speakers in the car, so it's not as good of a stereo system. However, it's still really good, and in my opinion, it is better than most stereos in other cars. So even having that less capable stereo is definitely a nice experience in this car. If you haven't experienced it, in the Model 3, the visibility is really good. Now, you don't sit up as high as the Model Y, but you have this big open window in front of you with a lot of visibility, and all the windows are very low, so you get really good visibility all the way around the car. And one of the pros in the Model 3 versus the Model Y is the fact that that back window is a large window instead of that small, very angled window in the back of the Model Y. Another thing that's obvious about this car is it's super cheap to operate. I have yet to spend any money on this car in 6 months, which shouldn't be a surprise, but over the life of this car, the cost to own this car is going to be so much better than most cars on the road. If you've been in a Tesla, you know how comfortable the interior is. These seats are so comfortable. I love the seats in my Model Y. These are the same seats in the Model 3, even the Standard Range Plus. You don't get less comfortable seats by going with the Standard Range option. This car is super comfortable, and it makes it really nice for any kind of long trips that you're going to be doing. And even on a day-to-day basis, it's nice to be comfortable in your car at this level. It's really interesting because even the Standard Range Plus Model 3 has the new updated Matrix headlights, and those are still not yet available on the long range Model Y, which is substantially more money than this car is. They are really good, and having both headlights, I can tell you the Matrix headlights definitely add good visibility at night. Now, with all that said, I think that there's a few things that are a drawback, and some of these are going to be specific to where you're located and what your climate is like. First and foremost, although I love having LFP because I can get 100%, I'm in a cold climate, and that means during cold months, I don't have full access to regen braking. As a matter of fact, there are some times I have no regen braking at all. So that is going to add to wear and tear on the brakes of this car, but more importantly, it changes the way that this car drives depending on the weather. It also impacts how this car charges. These LFP batteries do not like the cold like the NCA batteries do in other Teslas, and presumably the 4680s, which will be even better. So if you're in a cold climate, just know you're probably going to struggle getting these batteries warm at any time during the winter. So I can go an entire day, just like now I've been running errands, and my battery is still not warm enough. I have less than half of my regen available to me, and that has not changed in the time that I've been driving around. Now, preconditioning in this car for supercharging does work the same way it does in other Teslas. If you select a charger to go to, it'll automatically start to precondition the batteries to prepare it for fast charging. But because these LFP batteries don't like the cold, they do not warm up near as fast as the other batteries. So that's something to really consider and to think about if you're in a cold climate. These batteries don't perform as well in the cold as the other batteries do. One of the things that is not specific to this car, but to every Tesla now that is made and sold, is this vision only system. Autopilot is fantastic and it works really great, even basic autopilot like what we have on this car, especially on road trips. However, if you are on a road that has traffic coming your direction, if there's nothing in between you, like on an interstate, phantom braking is really bad. If big trucks or semis are coming your direction, this car will brake, and it will brake hard, even when that truck is in its own lane, and it's a real issue. Now, it's something that I've been experiencing since we took delivery of our Model Y that has vision only, and it's really not gotten much better. So I'm hoping that Tesla starts to put more focus on addressing phantom braking with oncoming traffic. Another thing that I noticed, not just for me, but definitely at superchargers, is the fact that these seats, because they sit so low, if you have any back pain or knee or hip pain or issues like that, and sometimes even older folks who still want to have an electric car, this Model 3 sits so low, I watch people struggle to get out of it sometimes, and it's usually either a much older person or somebody who clearly has some sort of a back issue or knees or hips. So this does sit low like a sports car, and if that's something you don't like, that's something you really gotta get used to. It definitely sits a lot lower than the Model Y, especially in these seats. Also with the charging, another thing to think about with the Standard Range Plus, you are limited on how fast this thing can supercharge. So with V2 chargers, you're gonna be just fine, but getting access to V3 chargers, you're not going to have access to that full speed, which is kind of a disappointment. So V3 chargers today can charge up to 250 kilowatt charge rate. Now that's going to increase in the future, which is great, but this car is capped at 170, and again, that's assuming the batteries are warm enough to accept a full speed charge. So this car cannot charge as fast as the other cars can, and with its limited range, that means you're going to be charging a lot more and a lot longer on road trips. The crazy thing is this particular car has gone up so much in 2021 in price that it has really started to change the dynamics of, is this worth it compared to a long range? Now, going from standard range to long range used to be a lot closer to $10,000, but today that difference is only $6,000. And if you're going to spend this kind of money, you may want to really consider that $6,000, because not only do you get more interior features like more speakers, but you also get all-wheel drive and nearly 100 miles of additional range. Plus, those batteries are going to perform better in cold weather than this LFP, depending on, again, your climate. Now, like I've said a number of times, I live in a cold climate, and one of the things I was worried about is having rear-wheel drive in a snow climate. So our driveway faces north, so after it snows, my driveway is either ice or snow until it gets warm enough, 45 or better, before that will start to melt. So having ice on the driveway is a real issue and something I was really concerned about. Now this car actually doesn't struggle as much as I thought it would, and I just have the factory wheels and factory tires on it. So if you are worried about it, it is a simple solution by just putting some better tires on it, but I haven't had to do that. So it actually does perform pretty well in the snow. Usually a rear-wheel drive here in this area in winter is a major no-no, but this car has a very good advanced traction control system that does a great job of trying to get the power where it needs to be to stop you from losing traction. So I've yet to not be able to get up the driveway, although your experience may vary. So again, at the time I bought this, it was $39,990, and that is a really good deal for this car. I think the value is there 100%. Now that it's $45,000, I think the value is still there. It's just not at the same level as it was before. You're a $45,000 car, now you're starting to look at other $45,000 cars, and it does become more complicated when you start to think about, is it worth the $45,000? But that said, this car has been fantastic, and the one thing that keeps coming to mind every time I drive this car is, for substantially less money than the cheapest Model Y, you can still get a full Tesla experience with the Standard Range Plus. You're really not giving up that much when you get this car compared to a long range all-wheel drive Model Y or a long range all-wheel drive Model 3 for that matter. You still have the same experience in this car as you would in the other trims. The only differences that you're going to have are how much range it has, how quick it goes 0 to 60. You're not going to have all-wheel drive, and you're going to lose a few speakers. So everything else, though, for the most part is the same, and you still feel that same luxury Tesla experience in this car. Has the same autopilot system, still has same access to that full self-driving package, which is now $12,000. But this car is solid, and although I wish it was still sub $40,000, I still think it's a great buy, even at $45,000. There are countless videos out there comparing total cost of ownership over a period of time, comparing this car to a Toyota Camry, And I'm not going to compare those numbers for you here today because there's so many resources to look that up. But this car continues to be cheaper to own and operate than a Toyota Camry of all cars. So keep that in mind. It's hard to get past a $45,000 sticker price and try to compare that to what the sticker price is on a Camry. It's more than just how much it costs to buy the car. It's how much it costs to operate it and maintain it. And most importantly, the residual value at the end of the time that you have it. Just like other Teslas, these things hold their value at a crazy level, and that's not going to change in the short term. Now, long term, that may actually change, but as it sits today, the resale value on these cars continues to be very high, which means the value of this car continues to be very strong. So 6 months later, here we are. I'm so glad that we bought this car, and I'm glad we bought it when we did, before prices went up $5,000 from that point. So if you're considering a Standard Range Plus, I think that as long as it's in your budget, you shouldn't think twice about it. It is absolutely worth getting a Standard Range Plus. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, of course, give it the thumbs up. If you haven't already, of course, subscribe to the channel as we continue to post content regularly. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Bearded Tesla. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.